Hey everyone, we are back with Season 8, Episode 1 of Board Game Games. It's been quite a while, but that's okay. I've been actually working on board games. I am here with Eric King, who is probably going to be joining me for some episodes. How are you doing today, Eric?
I am doing great.
You're listening to Board Game Games, Season 8, Episode 1, where I get back into recording the podcast with Eric King. Thanks for listening as we continue to explore the world of gaming.
Pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to talking board games.
Yeah.
Always a subject I'm willing to talk about.
So Eric, we met at the shop here at Capstone Games a while ago.
Yeah, a year or so, two ago.
Yeah, and Eric, we've had some good conversations in the past, and we've been trying to make this happen for a while, get the podcast going again. But Eric, I rode back with him as he drove the truck back filled with Capstone physical games from Gen Con last year, 2024. That was a nice conversation. Nice time hanging out. I think he's going to help out with Gen Con again this year,
yes,
which is cool. But we thought we would just get the stuff rolling again, talking about deck building. And you said that you realized you didn't have as many games in your deck building collection as you thought, even though it's one of your favorite mechanisms. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I love deck building. I like engine builders as well, and they're kind of two of the same, right? You're making your engine better. You're making your deck better. So I realized I really early on when I was playing games, I really enjoyed that mechanic, but some of the deck builders start to kind of feel samey, right? Like when you're playing a lot of deck builders, not all of them, but a lot of them. It has the same core of draw a hand of 5, play what you can. You're going to, do one action with some and buy other cards with some, and then you refill your hand. So then I started getting into other games that incorporate deck building, which I think a couple that you want to talk about that kind of quickly rose up my ranks of favorite games. And I guess I found I've kind of like deck building as a part of a game rather than the entire game.
Right, which anybody who's listened to this before knows I have a little bit of beef with, or I guess maybe if they've listened a lot, I have a little bit of beef with this certain deck builder that is the granddaddy of all of them, Dominion, because it is just deck building the game, and once you have figured out with whatever expansion that you have thrown in, you have figured out the right combos, you can just fly through that, which I don't really find that interesting at all myself. I think I'm going to probably just start saying more controversial things to tick off more people as now that we're back. No, this is not the Hot Takes podcast, but related to that, I mean, some people really love Dominion. Great for them. I'm glad that they do. And, they have their whole, nice wood storage system. That's great. I will not play Dominion with them because they're going to be done in 20 minutes and I'll be sitting there with 3 points. On that note, but with deck building, how do you delineate between deck building and deck construction for somebody who's just learning about games more?
So when the term deck construction, I always think of card games like Marvel Champions and that sort of thing, where you're constructing your deck in advance. Mm-hmm. That's how I've always understood the difference. Whereas deck building, it's an action throughout the game where you're improving your deck, changing your deck somehow for other actions and cascading actions. I am a Marvel Champions fan. I do like Marvel Champions, but the deck construction is one of my least favorite parts of that game. I know a lot of people love it. Mm-hmm. When I play a game, I want to play the game. I don't want to prepare to play the game.
You don't want the pre-game game of going through all that.
But I can see how that is appealing to a lot of people who play those sort of games, and Magic and that sort of thing as well, where you're kind of fine-tuning your deck before you play. But I prefer the real-time experience of changing your deck turn by turn, and that pressure of, there's a card available that you want, but also we know one of the other players might want, and trying to make the moves to get that card first.
Yeah, how important do you think that flop is in like a market system? So like I used to play a lot of Marvel Legendary, for example, and it seemed like there were times that something would come up and I have the perfect hand to deal with that right now. So I'm gonna just be able to do that right now. How do you deal with that? And then let's talk about Century Spice.
I think so. Right, that's exactly where I was going to go with that. Is the flop, of course, it's important, but I prefer deck builders where there's a different economy to get the cards. Right, you need to have the resources or the money or whatever it is to get. So that's why Century Spice, or I prefer the Century Golem version because I love the art and the theme better. But if you're not familiar with it, there's the available market of cards you have to pay gems to get, and you have to put one on every card as you go down the line until you get the card that you want. I much prefer that than just, hey, here's the market, you get what you get, and then that card is replaced when someone else takes the card that inevitably that you wanted to get. I love Century Spice. I've played Century Spice where I like Century Golem. I love that game because it feels different than many deck builders where you're more in control of your hand size, that variable hand size. I like when I play that game, I like to try to challenge myself, and I've done it a few times with how few times can I take that rest action to essentially lose a turn, but to recover all the cards in my hand. So I'll try to get one of the first card or two in the market row and grab the gems off those and just try to keep playing with that. So that's a kind of a fun challenge.
But there are cards in that game that are substantially better than
sure.
others, especially early on.
Yeah.
That like straight up give you resources that are way more valuable than others.
Yeah.
So the flops does still seem to matter.
Yes.
But you feel like that laying on of going from the cards closest to being out to the ones that just came out, that helps to balance that out, is what you're saying? Or
I think it does in that one, because depending on where you're going in turn order, you start with more gems, so you can get ones that you have more available to you than first player would have. So yeah, I think it balances out. But you're right, there are definitely cards that are more powerful. And I think almost any deck builder that I can think of, some certain cards are more powerful than others. Right? Yeah.
Do you have an ideal player count because of that in Century Spice?
I don't know because of that. I just prefer it at 2 or 3 just for snappier turns, right? Because I'm staying in the market and there's not a lot to do in between turns in that one. So I like 2 or 3. I know not a deck builder, but a lot of people really love Splendor at 2, and they prefer it to. I almost prefer Golem at 2 over Splendor.
I think I really like it at 3. That's why I was wondering, because I feel like I've been in that. I don't know that it's unfair, but I've been in that 4th position in Century where I feel like, oh, you got that and you got that, and then now I'm left with very little. So I think 2 and 3 is really good for that game. So since we're there with Splendor and Century, do you think there is a difference between, like you mentioned really quickly, the difference between like tableau building and engine building and what you're doing with deck building? Why do you think those feel so adjacent?
Well, it's that leveling up, right? It's that upgrading your machine, your engine, card after card. And a lot of the engine builders and tableau builders, they're all laid out in front of you, whereas with the deck builders, you're kind of, you've got that randomness, a little bit of the draw, and many of them, but they feel almost, to me, they feel like 2 halves of the same. There's different ways in a good engine builder, a good deck builder. There are different directions you can go, and you can do completely different strategies than your neighbor. Meaning, some cards you'll be looking for, other cards they'll be looking for, but still to the same conclusion. Century Spice Road, Century Golem, you're all building towards the same cards to fulfill, right? But you're going about it in different ways. So yeah, I like engine builders. I don't know if I have a preference of engine builders or deck builders, but because they do feel so similar to me.
Have you played Abandon All Artichokes?
I love Abandon All Artichokes.
It's the silliest little game I've probably talked about more than anything else. But like, I think what's interesting there is it's kind of a reverse deck builder, right? And so it takes what you were just talking about with like building up your engine and being adjacent in that way and flips it on its head, because it's really about... I haven't thought about how to quantify this, but it's really about the fact that your cards, that subtraction of your cards is physically important, which is weird. So it means that there's something there that I haven't quite figured out yet that is important for deck builders that is different than tableau building, right? Or engine building. But
yeah, you're taking away...
Right.
That constantly adding.
And if that's true, it seems like there must be something else there too for deck building too, than just that similarity of like ramping up. Because the ramping up that happens in Abandon All Artichokes has the same type of feel as a deck builder when you're going positive.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the card interaction.
Yeah.
But it ends up going in the opposite direction.
Well, I like one of my favorite parts of a deck builder is the discard card that you get, right? Because many deck builders, I don't know if there's one I can think of off the top of my head where you
maybe that's it. It's that self-selection of like, here's what I need to trim.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of deck builders, that's the best cards. I love those cards because then you can you're fine-tuning that engine, right?
Yeah.
And that's all Abandon All Artichokes is.
Yeah.
Is just that fine-tuning and fine-tuning.
Yeah.
What do you think about Abandon All Artichokes as a intro deck? I've heard a lot of people say it's a good introductory deck builder, and I don't know that I agree with that because I think you've really got to understand that mechanic, I think, to do well.
I think the reason people like it for that is it is accessible for like younger kids. They can generally do okay with it because they understand that concept of like, I don't want this thing, I'm going to get it out of my hand, and so. Most people, I think the thing that gets in the way and why it might not be a good intro deck builder is when somebody has expectations about what a deck builder should be. Yeah. But if it's something where, I'm just teaching this game to somebody, and I'm not going to add in that preconceived idea of I know what a deck builder is, but instead it's about like, I'm just going to do exactly what the game is telling me to do. I'm getting rid of artichokes. And then you tell them, okay, did you enjoy that experience? You might like deck builders over here too. Yeah. If you're using it for that type of thing, I think it's probably useful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I like it's a race, right? The end game condition is whoever draws a hand of 5 without any artichokes in it first.
Right.
And you start with just 10 artichoke cards.
Yeah.
So every turn you're adding a card, you're adding at least one. And a lot of deck builders, they don't have that.
Right.
Some deck builders, you're adding every single turn. That's the entire crux of the game is every turn you're adding something to hopefully get rid of the artichoke cards. But it's that race of you never know when one of your opponents is going to be the first to draw. And you can kind of have a sense of how they're doing just by their, the size of their deck, but you don't really know how close they are to finishing. And
right.
I love the game. I'm the king of drawing 4 garden row cards and 1 artichoke the turn before someone goes out. But I still love it. I'm not great at it, but I love the game.
Yeah. So let's talk about a couple somewhat meatier games. Or did you have specific ones on your list you want to go to?
No, I think I know where you're going.
Okay. So. Related to that, there were 2 games that came out at a similar time. I still love these games a lot, although one has won out because of the amount of and the type of material that has come out for it. Do you want to take a guess at which one it is?
Well, I think it's the Arnak Dune Imperium.
Yeah, that's the games. Which one do you think I like better? Because they both have had content, and recently, I think it was just a couple weeks ago when I was at Gamma Expo. Arnak, in fact, announced that there's going to be a big box you can put everything in, and there might be a little bit more content for it or something. I don't know. Whatever. I don't know that I need more.
More Arnak?
More Arnak, which sorry, I've already given away with my answer.
I would have picked Dune Imperium anyway.
Yeah.
For you, knowing the type of gamer, and you said what they've came out with, and I think the Dune Imperium expansions add a lot to those games. And then, I mean, is Dune Imperium Uprising an expansion? Is it whatever your thoughts on that? The expansions that I've played for original Dune Imperium and Uprising, they add a lot. Whereas I think the Arnak expansions, I think they add different things for different people, what they're looking for, right? Because one's adds solo and co-op, campaign style, and then the other is asymmetry, which they're very different, directions. I think with those expansions,
right? It makes, especially with the asymmetry one, it makes it a game that you can experience in new and different ways, which that's great. That's a good experience for an expansion, but it's absolutely not necessary if you're looking to better your skills at the game. In fact, it makes it that cognitive load higher in order to better your skills at the game. I went from being interested in trying to get more competitive and get higher and higher scores, and to being less interested in that fact when the asymmetric factions came out, because it just the amount of possibilities for how interactions could happen went up, and so I liked it. It just didn't feel as much about the deck building to me, and I would absolutely argue it is a deck building game. What cards you buy are
for sure
incredibly important in the game, but I just don't enjoy it as much as the deck building that I do now in Dune Imperium.
But Dune Imperium, the leader cards, they're all asymmetric.
Yeah.
So,
but there was that way from the start,
right? How would you feel if it came out with when Dune Imperium came out? If it had I know Architects of the West Kingdom just comes to mind. They have one side of the player boards where they're symmetric. Flip it over, it's asymmetric. So what if you had Paul Atreides, the symmetric side where everyone has maybe different characters, but they have the same signet ring powers to start off with, and then you can flip it to get leader powers.
I don't know. Okay, here's the other thing. So some of this is about experience and how many times I've played it. So but Dune Imperium, I've played between the two versions. I haven't played it like Kevin Bertram from Fort Circle, played 400 plus times, whatever. But I played over 100 times, and I'm including the app there. Of course.
Gotcha.
Okay. I'm including the app. But so probably more 150, 160, somewhere in there. I think I want the asymmetric. It ends up being a close game almost every time I play, unless I see a really clear. The only times it hasn't been close is when I've been able to steal a victory because I see a really clear way to snatch some points on those influence, with the 4 different factions on the side there. Unless I see a way to snatch those from other people and just jump up 3 or 4 points at the end and lock in a victory. Other than that, and I've seen a couple other people do that, but other than that, most of the time it's within a point or two consistently. Well, Arnak, I've seen more wild scores. Now that game I've probably only played 40 to 50 times, and almost exclusively in person. So, and that's the caveat of a difference of experience there.
What's interesting is when we talk even in Dune Imperium, everyone starts the same hand of cards, right? So that's the hallmark of deck builders. Right. We're all starting from the same. Yeah. But those leader abilities kind of set people up differently, right? I mean, I don't know. Would you agree that some leaders are more powerful and more? You would want some leaders more than others, or not? Some
leaders benefit more from having experience than others, is what I would say in Dune. I think the
complexities are different,
right? I would say that their balance is they're perfectly balanced because I've played all of them, but some more than others. But there are some that are just easier to grok. You can see what's going on. You can see your path forward, from A to B.
Yeah.
That would be what I would say personally. How about you?
I just think it's just interesting. I mean, it just struck me as interesting since that you're starting off with that. I don't want to say uneven playing field, but just different. You're starting. It's almost like if you had a deck builder, and you all started the same cards, but then you all were dealt one of the upgrade cards randomly, right?
Yeah.
It kind of sets you on your path.
I don't know that I would hate that.
No. I'm not saying it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's that difference, especially comparing Arnak to Dune Imperium. I find Arnak. I mean, there's the worker placement kind of interaction, but Arnak is much more of a. I don't want to say multiplayer solitaire, but it's much more of a. I'm going to do my own kind of thing. I find it's easier to get around people blocking you in Arnak than in Dune Imperium. But I guess we've got Uprising now with the spies. That does change that as well.
Yeah. I enjoy all versions of it, and honestly, I would play any of the three right now.
Yeah, they're excellent.
They're all good games. So
why do you think they would get compared so much? Why are they compared so much? Because
they came out at the same time, and I use this term, and I'm definitely not the first person to come up with it, but I don't remember where I heard it first. They are hybrid games without a doubt, and that you are doing some things that feel like worker placement. You're doing some deck construction, and you're doing deck building,
mm-hmm.
and you're doing some resource management, and so those things combined together with the strong theming that would have not shown up in Euro designed games 15 years ago. I think all that brings it together to a point that you're either playing Indiana Jones the game or or literally Dune,
right?
Yeah. So I think that's the biggest reason is that in the same way that like Terraforming Mars when it came out helped people to see like, oh, we can really have popular fairly complex games. That's what Terraforming Mars really did when it exploded on the market the way it did the year it came out. And then we got Wingspan coming after that and so forth. But I think that those two games coming out and having their success at the same time help people to see that people want a hybrid of mechanics mixed with that strong theme of feeling like I'm doing something in some world somewhere.
Yeah. And I think that's what Dune Imperium does so well is when you're playing with those different leaders,
mm-hmm.
if you're familiar with the characters, it feels like you are playing as those characters. And it's just a simple, two power differences, right?
Yeah.
I think Arnak is probably more accessible to people, maybe I don't want to say intro gamers, but people getting into the hobby. Then I think there's a little bit more overhead with Dune and how to do it well. I think
so.
Yeah. And I think obviously knowing Dune and being a fan of the Dune IP makes a huge difference as well.
I think that's fair. Well, we're going to wrap up here in a second, but my question for you is, what is a bad deck building game? I'm going to put you on the spot. Yeah.
What's a bad deck building game?
Yeah, because you've mentioned good ones that you've enjoyed, but what is one that you have? I called out mine, and it's not really a surprise to anyone.
What was yours?
Dominion.
Oh yeah. I've never played Dominion.
Oh what? Okay.
I've never played Dominion.
We might have to rectify that part. Although and this is not going to surprise anybody who's listening to everything either. But I would just say, just play Trains instead. You get a little board game and you do the same type of deck building.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I'm ready to name one as bad, but I think when deck builders take that deck building mechanic and they add another layer onto it, I'm more apt to gravitate toward that, right? Like Arnak, Imperium, Trains, right?
That's a very nice answer.
You have the okay. Well, so a deck builder that I have culled from my collection is Star Realms.
Oh yeah, why? Why did you take it out?
I enjoy Star Realms, but I think it's best at 2-player. I mean, you can play with more, but it's a 2-player game, essentially. And I found that I didn't really care what my opponent was doing. right? Because I'm just working on my engine, right? And
I'm a blob player. I just attack as many of them as I can as fast as I can.
I don't know. It depends on yeah. But I do have the app.
Yeah.
And I play on the app all the time against AI. Yeah. Because again, I don't care what my opponent's doing. And then the Star Wars deck building game came out, which to me is Star Realms Plus. Yeah. Right? And it has the IP. I'm a Star Wars fan. I like
so you're talking about the 2024 one.
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
Because there's been a few different iterations.
It's the Luke Vader where you've got the Force track and so on. And you can. I found it was really interesting where you can destroy cards in the market. Yeah. Some cards are only for one side and not the other side. Yeah. I think that's interesting.
And then there's a little Force tug of war going on. Yeah. That was a slight addition versus just straight up Star Realms.
And that's still not one of my favorite deck builders, but I have it because I enjoy it. Yeah. But I'm content playing Star Realms on the app. Yeah. I don't need to own it. Yeah. So, and I think I may have tried the Dominion app once, and I think it was the first of its kind, right? So I think a lot of people, certain games have fondness because that was the game that first introduced a mechanic or was someone's gateway into the hobby, and I think Dominion is that for a lot of people. Like
plus, there's 20 expansions,
right? Like a Catan or anything that introduces something new or has a big following. You're gonna maintain a sizable audience, but I came in 10 years probably after Dominion into the hobby. 10 years after Dominion was out, so I don't have those fond memories of the first time I played Dominion because I played other deck builders probably before that. So I don't know. I could probably look through a list and find deck builders I'm not I don't really enjoy, but it's one of my favorite mechanics. So if it's in a game, I'm probably going to enjoy it.
Fair enough.
Before we go, I want to hit on
Board
Game Geek.
Let's do it.
Board Game Geek.
Okay.
If you look up mechanics, deck building is combined with bag building and dice building.
So let's make the next episode about that.
Okay.
Let's start right there.
I have thoughts.
Yeah, you do have thoughts. So wait, real quick, what is a dice? A bag builder. Let's just go do bag builder right now. What is a bag building game that is not the same mechanic as deck building? And then
I think any of them. Because deck building, well, okay. Now that you got me thinking about it. So deck building, I know I'm going to see that card, right, eventually. Yeah. But in bag building, I mean, I guess you could. I guess it depends on the game. You would know you'll eventually pull that chit out of the bag, but you might not, right? A lot of bag builders, you'll bag it and then you refill the bag.
So you're saying the fact that most deck builders, you're playing out your entire deck before you reshuffle.
Correct. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start with that next time. Okay. Bag building games, good bag building games, and I'm going to ask you again. So you're prepared.
All right. I'll do some
your bad bag building game.
All right.
Are we going to talk about quacks? Yeah, probably. So thanks for listening, everybody. Happy gaming, and we will catch you next time. Anything you want to say before we head out, Eric?
No, I want to know what people's favorite deck builders are. I'm always looking for more, so let us know.
You just finished listening to Season 8, Episode 1 of Board Game Games, where we talked about deck builders for a bit with my new co-host, Eric King. Thanks for listening as we continue to explore the world of tabletop gaming. Happy gaming. We'll catch you later.